and they're not fleeing a war zone. They're fleeing France. And I would love to hear anyone who's arguing that case argue that they are not safe in France. If I still don't see why we just can't stop them leaving France rather than go through this shroud of them coming here.
So you'd never accept any refugees here because we happen to be an island. So, and that's frankly a ridiculous argument.
We should be. I'm taken so many now that it's changing our way of life. We can't cope with them. It's destroying us financially.
I'm so sick of hearing we need safe and legal routes. That is the last thing we need from the third world. Why doesn't this Green Party lunatic just admit she wants open borders to the entire world? Why not rename our island the Migrant Isles while we're at it? The Green Party would probably force us to take them all in our own houses if they were in power. That's communism. In Mao's China, families were forced to take in party members. Families were forced to live in a single room at the back of their own houses while groups of young men lived in the rest of the house. We are getting towards that already with this government. We have British people being evicted so illegal immigrants can be moved in, all paid for with taxpayers' money. She kept saying they are fleeing war and death and they need to get here. Firstly, they want to get here. They don't need to come. Then her opponent repeatedly asked her, what war are they fleeing from in France? She refused to answer and said they are fleeing war in places like Sudan and Afghanistan. Then he replied, well, now they are safe in France, so they don't need to come here. She just ignored that point and they kept going round in circles. She knows there is no war in France and she couldn't care less. She just hates the idea of borders and thinks anyone and everyone in the world should be allowed here simply because they want to move here. And remember, our current government's position on this is not that different to this woman. Take a listen.
Is that you cannot, if the system is swamped by largely young men jumping in boats. So the principle is sound, but I think the scheme is literally the bare minimum that they could get away with today without it being excruciatingly embarrassing. This is a small fraction of the people who turn up every day who face the prospect of going back. It's a temporary scheme, it seems. At the moment, it feels to me a bit gimmicky, a bit tokenistic. And I remember dealings between Boris Johnson and Macron. He's extremely charming, but he's very, very slippery as well. And I'm not sure the scheme is even off the ground to the extent that, Keir Starmer thinks and says it is tonight.
Well, I think to pick up on something Guto was saying about people jumping the queue by getting into small boats. I mean, we've got to face the reality. Why are people getting into boats? It's because they haven't got safe and managed routes to get here. There's no question of jumping the queue because there isn't a queue. There isn't another way to claim asylum unless you're Ukrainian. And of course, we've shown that we can have safe and managed routes, but they're only for certain nationalities, largely Ukrainians. We ought to have a system that provides safe and managed routes for people who are fleeing violence wherever they are in the world. And if we had that, we wouldn't see all of these desperate people getting into these boats for these really, really dangerous journeys. So I think we need to step back from the agreement that's been made today. So there is arguably a safe and managed route for the people who are being exchanged for those that are being sent back. But bizarrely, this tiny route for 50 people a week is going to depend on the deportation of people. So it's going to need people to make dangerous journeys in order for the quid pro quo to work. To work. Why doesn't the government just create the safe and managed routes?
If you are in a UN camp, in a war zone, you can apply there and then to come to the UK, and eventually that thing will be processed. There's no prospect of that happening at the moment because we are, overwhelmed by the number of people coming here, and they are almost invariably young men. You look at the pictures of that. They're young men getting into the boats, and they're not fleeing a war zone. They're fleeing France. And I would love to hear anyone who's arguing that case argue that they are not safe in France. If anyone wants to make the case that they are in danger sitting there in Calais and therefore need to cross the channel in order to be safe, It's ludicrous. They're already safe. So why? Why are they coming here? And I still don't see why we just can't stop them leaving France rather than go through this shroud of them coming here, and then a small proportion of them, maybe if this thing works today, might just get sent back over the channel.
Ellie.
I mean, on that basis, Guto, you'd never accept any refugees here because we happen to be an island. So people always have to go somewhere else before they can get here. I mean, that's frankly a ridiculous
We're not
argument.
to that point. I'm very pro-migration, but we have taken so many now that it's changing our way of life. We can't cope with them. It's destroying us financially. People are resentful. And our politics is going to be changed beyond recognition.
That's simply not true. As Sophie was saying just a few moments ago, actually, the people who are coming over in boats are 5% less of the total migration numbers. They are people who are fleeing violence. They're from places like Afghanistan,
They're
places
fleeing
like
France.
South
They've
Sudan.
already
They have
escaped
made
South
journeys from these,
Sudan.
and because they haven't had any opportunity to apply for asylum from the places that they've fled from, they've been forced into these incredibly dangerous journeys. Nobody wants them to go through those journeys. Nobody wants smuggling gangs to be making a fortune off the back of them. But the fact is that because we don't have safe and managed routes for people to be able to claim asylum, we're not taking them in. And as for the argument that we're doing our fair share, there's 42.5 million refugees in the world. We are definitely not taking anywhere close to our fair share of the people who are fleeing violence.
Really interesting debate.